Good evening, everyone. It is 5:01. This is a meeting of the Oregon Village Board, so I would like to call to order and request roll call, please.
Bollig,
Here.
Boudreaux,
Here.
Grenier,
Here.
Bredhauer,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Staton,
Here.
Carpenter.
Here. No one wants my cheese curds.
Okay, so we have a fairly long agenda item on the, on TID 5, and I know we have at least one person here for something way down the agenda, and he said he forgot his sleeping bag, so we're gonna move that up and give that a chance to go. So I don't think it'll take too long, and that's item 25A, which is report of committees, and this is from the Public Works and Utility meeting from July 31st, 2017. Trustee Bredhauer is the chair of that committee, so I'll turn this item over to him. So Doug, you're on.
Let me gather my information here.
Okay, sorry, I should have told you this, shouldn't I?
Twenty-five A1?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, the Autumnwood Greens Condo Association.
all right. Okay, the meeting of July 31st, 2017. Discussion and possible action regarding Autumnwood Greens Condominium Association and the request to be included under the village contract with Pelletary Waste Systems for garbage and recycling services. The Public Works and Utility Committee motion, Boudreaux moved, seconded by Bollig, to recommend this item be placed on the August 7th, 2017 Village Board meeting for further discussion regarding the Autumnwood Greens Condominium Association and the request to be included under the village contract with Pelletary Waste Systems for refuse and recycling. Motion carried 3-0.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So, sir, if you'd like to come to the microphone at the table, please, and give us a brief description of what you'd like here.
So, Steve, unlike most motions that come from committee, this one actually wasn't decided by the committee.
Right.
Except for to bring it to the board meeting. So I don't know what the second was. There's not actually a motion on the floor.
The motion out of the committee
Yeah.
actually said to include them in the contract.
Well, the way I'm reading this, it was recommended that this be placed on the August 7th village board meeting for further discussion. So I don't have a clear recollection. So was there a motion that's not on the agenda today that recommended they be included?
The motion coming out of the committee is that it was be further discussed here, but that, and as part of that the board would consider including them in the Pelletary contract. So it could have been a cleaner motion. I know what you're saying. Usually the motion is coming out of committee is to include or not include them, but I think
My recollection is that they are to be, the committee, our vote was to include them in the contract.
So I'll make a motion to include them in the contract for discussion, which
And I'll
Doug said he'll
I'll
second.
amend my second to second that motion.
Okay. Can we withdraw a motion like that, Matt?
Well, we never made one. I just made the
Okay, I
first
thought
motion.
Doug made his motion.
and then
Jerry seconded.
yeah, and then Jerry seconded. Yeah. So what happened, Matt, was this is the motion that came out of committee. So Doug made it, Jerry seconded, and then just questioning whether or not, whether or not this is actually the motion, because the committee is not, the committee didn't recommend, they wanted it to be placed on the agenda for further discussion. But as part of that, they were also, I thought, including the request to be part of Pelletary's contract, so I think are you restating the motion? You want to make it clear? Is that?
All I'm suggesting is for clarification, Doug did not make a motion. If all he did was read this text, there isn't a motion in this text except for to bring it forward for discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought Doug brought his motion forward.
No,
Okay.
Jeff is correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So Jerry
then you-
seconded it, Jerry seconded didn't count.
Yeah, okay.
So then I
You're off.
ask for clarification, I
Yeah.
make the motion to
Okay.
accept them
Okay,
under the village's contract, and Jerry said he'll second
okay,
that.
so that's all set.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, so now you're up, sir. You identify yourself and address, please.
I'm Jim Fisher, president of the condo association called Autumnwood Greens. We're located across from the Oregon Middle School. We have 27 standalone units. we've always negotiated our own contracts with Palateri. We determined after Palateri raised our rate on January 1st that we should check with the village and find out whether or not we could use the village's negotiating power rather than our having to negotiate with Palateri. We went to the Public Works Committee, talked to Jeff Rao, we put on the agenda for Public Works, it was approved, and here we are. We're hoping that the village will be able to negotiate contracts for us rather than us having to do it ourselves.
Okay. There you are.
Are we on? Okay. Yeah, that is correct. I don't know if, I think the only thing to clarify is we would not be negotiating for Autumn Wood Greens Homeowners Association. We just negotiate a contract with Palateri. The question is whether or not Palateri, or whether or not we would allow Autumn Wood Greens Homeowners Association to come under our contract. The only thing with that is our contract lists it for single-family homes, duplexes, and fourplexes. And everything above that is supposed to be privately contracted, and I think that's kind of where they ended up where they are. The difference in cost is mostly due to the fact that for Palateri to manage a smaller account costs a little more money, and that's why it's several dollars more, I think, a month. I don't have a problem with Autumn Wood Greens. I think in my memo, I think I said that I don't really have a problem with it. It makes sense. They are single-family homes, just in a setup kind of where it's a condominium style, I believe. But the only other thing that we require from Palateri is Palateri does require an indemnification to be signed by the association president, and then we'd keep that on file, a copy of that on file with us.
And we agree to do that.
Okay. Questions and discussion, Jared?
Yes, I just want to point out that this will not cost the other residents of the village any extra money. This is just a pass-through. I assume,
Yeah.
where's Lisa? Oh, right there hiding. I assume that they'll start getting a bill. It'll be added to their public services bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can answer. Yeah, that would, basically, they're not charged right now for the refuse and recycling on their monthly bills, and that's just added on. So there really isn't, there's not a additional cost, just as much as if we had 12 homes enter into the
Right.
village and we would add them onto their,
I just wanted to make
contract.
that. I just wanted to make that clear.
Other questions or comments over here?
I think there was a cost savings on Palateri's part as well. They could bill much easier if everybody were treated in the same way.
Yeah, that seems like that would be more efficient for them. Jeff, do you see a problem with other associations wanting to come in under the same guidelines?
I think we'll have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. I think, we can, judging from the standpoint that these are single-family homes, they have the same single-family receptacles. They'll have to pay additional upcharges if they want the larger receptacles. It'll be pretty much the same way. Now, if let's say Jefferson Crossing came to us and wanted the same thing, I believe that's a completely different standard and setup that we
Yeah.
would, and I think we just evaluate it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Matt has a question for you,
Yes.
Steve.
Well, I'm coming really quite late to the party, so my question was, the arrangements that's in place today is there, because that's the structure that's been set up for how the village has contracted for these services historically. And so condominium associations and other kinds of commercial, for example, users, they all are treated differently, right? They're required to contract for their own collection. And
Yeah.
so the question for me is, if there's going to be a change made to that now, and we will contract with Palateri to provide service not only to single-family homes, but also to this group of single-family homes, which is in a condominium association, it seems to me that does open the door for questioning then, how are we treating other residential customers? And is there a rational basis for treating some differently than others? Jefferson Crossing is an example. So I think that there is a question that and again, this is the first I've participated in this discussion,
Yeah.
so I think it'll probably require some study to see how are we treating different classes of residential customers, and is there a reason to stop with these folks, or do we need to go on and look at others as well?
Okay.
Just a kind of, this was from the Pelletier account executive, from an email on January 27th of this year. His suggestion was, I believe if you limit the HOAs to ones that have individual driveways per unit, that way no large multi-unit complexes that already have commercial services are eligible. So I think that,
And is this the only association that meets this description of single-family units with driveways and?
I haven't gone around and
we don't know that.
evaluated
Yeah.
all of this, but I mean, this would be very similar, I would assume, well, you know, the association, say like the Legend Hills at Bergamot would be very similar, or the ones that are on Dunn. But those are all individual driveways, individual, and I think the ones on Dunn have individual service as well.
Yep.
So,
As does Rolling Meadows.
yes.
And they're all contracting independently for their service now?
No, they're under the village.
Village contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Anything else? Questions or comments? Anyone? Anything else from staff? Okay, seeing none, we have the motion and second to approve Autumn Wood Greens Condo Association to be included on the village contract with Pelletier Waste Systems for garbage and recycling services. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
On behalf of the association, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We'll go back to the front. And I will turn this over to Chair Greg Schnelly of the Planning Commission.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order for the Plan Commission. Roll call, please.
Smithback. Here. Michaela Bano. Here. Severson. Carpenter. Here. Meyer. Molzon.
Here.
Schnelly.
Here.
John Bano.
Here.
Mar.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome the Planning Commission and commend Michaela Bino for being here as a student and the interest that she's showing the Planning Commission, so we appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, item 5, verification of proper legal notice.
It was posted?
Yep, that's all set, which takes us to item 6, Village Board and Planning Commission discuss Planning Commission's TID number 5 recommendation. There's a village administrator's note. The Planning Commission recommends the following motion. Direct the village planner and village staff to amend the preliminary TID number 5 southern boundary line to match current TID number 3 south boundary line, keeping the 3 parcels on North Jamesville Street as shown on the preliminary TID number 5 boundary map, and include the amended map and the project plan presented to the village board at the August 7th village board meeting. The village board will consider approving TID number 5 after taking action on the comprehensive plan amendment. So discussion?
Is somebody bringing that motion?
I think, Mike, you want to do an overview first? right?
Yeah, I think we're looking at information. gathered
Information first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just briefly, when the TID consultants from my office and myself reviewed the technical data for the area south of the downtown, we felt that a number of the properties in that residential area going down to Washington Street may be able to benefit from the rehabilitation funding potential of extending the TID that far south. In hearing what Dan and Scott brought back to my office after the Plan Commission meeting that I was absent for, it seemed like a case to me where the planning consultants got ahead of the feelings of the neighborhood and recommended perhaps 1 or 2 streets too many be included in the boundaries of the TID district. I want to emphasize that being in the TID district is a separate but Scott heard very clearly at the last meeting if the TID district should be moved farther north My understanding is the plan where it currently is for TID 3, which is on Elm Street, but that you're still receiving comments from the neighbors to the southern boundary of the downtown side of Elm Street out of the. And from my many years of experience, I know that it's possible of where neighbors are. I think that's clearly one of these instances.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, Mike.
Quick question for
Yeah.
Mike. Mike, you mentioned a rehabilitation benefit of being in a TID. Could you articulate that?
Well, for example, a TID district can fund grants for building rehabilitation, and that is not limited necessarily to non-residential properties. And a good number of communities in older neighborhoods make funds or matching funds available for home rehab, as well as more typical economic development activities.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Mike, so if I understand what you just articulated, it's a benefit to be in that tax incentive district then?
I think that technically it's a benefit, but when paired with our land use recommendations, which showed land use change, coming down to Elm Street, it is perceived as a threat. TID is most often used for redevelopment, and I think in this case, the beneficial potential that we saw being available for home rehabilitation, I think that benefit has been overwhelmingly compared to how TID can also fund redevelopment and the displacement of housing. But they are separate issues, and our motivation was primarily to help make residential rehabilitation funds available.
I'd like to rephrase what my question was. Can you define a little further what the threat is to a homeowner in that district?
Well, my perception from reading the correspondence is that a feeling that TID combined with changes to the future land use map, which recommend extension of the downtown down to Elm Street, is being perceived as TID funding home removal and redevelopment in that area. And certainly that is something that potentially can occur if those two things happen together.
But there wouldn't be a forced,
It's the property owner's choice.
right, that's what I thought. Okay, so this is totally up to the property owner.
And ultimately, the Plan Commission and the Village Board, when TID
Right.
requests are made.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So one more question
Yeah.
along that same line. If redevelopment was going to take place, I have a very limited experience with this. Are there steps that the Planning Commission has to take beyond the TID, beyond including the area in a TID to change the usage from single family to other usage that's not being entertained by just simply creating a TID?
Yes, and those steps would include the future land use map that's also on the agenda tonight. I think of that basically as a map of potential future zoning. If the future land use map recommends the downtown land use where currently it's residential, then that opens the door for people, property owners, to make rezoning requests from the residential zoning category to the downtown category. That would typically be step 2. And if you have the downtown zoning district as a property owner, then you have a wider range of redevelopment opportunities available to you, which include business development as well as multifamily development. So it's really three things that typically work together to enable redevelopment.
And before the property could be rezoned to a different use, it would have to come before the planning commission, they would have to make a recommendation to board, and the board would have to approve that recommendation, right?
That is correct. And even if the zoning request is consistent with the future land use map, the plan commission and the board ultimately still have control over the timing of that rezoning and ultimately the configuration of the redevelopment that might follow. So even if all three of those things are in place, the TID district, the future land use map, and zoning, there are many instances where nothing happens, even with all of those things in place.
And so by extension, you said the planning commission and the board would have control. By extension, the village residents have control over whether that would be rezoned to a different land use, regardless of what the map indicated, the land use map indicated.
Well, the property owner in particular, I would say, has the most control because they're the ones who make the decision about whether to attempt to redevelop a particular piece of property.
Yeah, I guess I was being a little bit vague. In as much as the planning commission is seated by the residents through the elected board, the residents maintain that control through the representatives was.
Yes, and rezoning requests also entail a public hearing.
Other questions or comments, planning commission? Questions or comments over here?
So Steve, there's two issues for the board. So the first one, Mike sort of went through it. The plan commission's recommendation was to move the TID 5, the proposed TID 5 boundary back to the current TID 3, except adding those three lots on Janesville Street. I can't see there, but I think it's up on there. Yep, thank you, Dan. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you'll see the next item is their residents on North Elm Street, and then the two houses on South Main Street who do not want to be part of the TID anymore. They've been part of TID 3 since 2005,
Yeah.
in the downtown master plan since 2000, but at this point, they want to be removed out of the proposed TID 5. So I think there's like two issues here. Does the board first want to, on a consensus, say, we agree with the planning commission's recommendation to move the boundary back into 5, and then you want to go further and talk about Elm Street and those two houses on South Main Street?
You're saying we can do, just kind of get,
Feedback.
not a vote, but
Consensus.
consensus on what the
Yep.
planning commission recommended?
Yep,
Okay.
that's what I would do first.
Can I ask a quick question before we proceed
Yeah.
with that? I just wanted to follow up. You had mentioned that there are grants generally, or there can be grants for residential homes to do some redevelopment. Are those state or federal grants generally?
No, they would be grants funded by the TID.
Okay. And do we have anything set up like that or planning on setting up anything
We
like that?
have that now for the downtown, for the facade grants. You just-
Right, but that's not residential, correct? That's only commercial?
Currently.
Yes.
I don't know if
So we
there's-
don't have anything set up for a residential program?
No, not at this point.
Certainly could be part of a program, and
Right.
it is a TID eligible cost,
Under the,
as written in the project plan.
so if the project plan is approved, you could implement that kind of a plan if you wanted to.
But there hasn't been any discussion about that yet?
No. Nope.
So, my,
I have a question. Can people in the back hear? You're hearing all right? Okay, so we'll try to be sure we get close to the microphone so that you can. If you can't hear, just raise your hand, please, and I'll ask people to get closer to the mic.
so my sense, and I'd love to get either an affirmation or a negative, but my sense is that that you're spot on, Mike, that, first of all, I don't think the letter was very well drafted to the residents that were being considered for the TID. I've read it myself, and people have been confused about it. I don't think there was anything technically wrong with the way it was written. It's just that it was open to interpretation in ways that led people down roads that weren't necessarily there, from my perspective. I think as a result, people became very concerned that what we were trying to do was redevelop their neighborhood. And as a result of that, they wanted to express in no uncertain terms that they were not in favor of redeveloping their neighborhood. I feel that kind of brought us to a point where now I'm learning that, in fact, we're not proposing redeveloping the neighborhood, And in fact, what's being proposed in terms of the TID 5 is a benefit to neighbors that want to improve their homes. And from my own knowledge, a lot of the reason that neighbors have been selling their homes is because they don't have the money to improve their homes. Whereas if the village was able to come through with an assist, perhaps it would allow people to stay in their homes instead of feeling as if they have to sell their homes. So to me, this is all new information this evening as far as how the TID can be used for the benefit of the residents to allow them to stay in their homes if that's in fact what they want. And also what came out today at this meeting is that while it's true that TIDs can happen to coincide with redevelopment efforts, that isn't necessarily always what happens, and that there are steps that have to be taken that involve the planning commission and the board's action before redevelopment could even be proposed, regardless of who the owner of the property is. I wonder, given all of this, since it's sort of, I'm sort of finding a new awareness, I'm wondering how my fellow board members have received the information, and even if this information is news to the residents in the gallery who might have been looking at the issue through a specific lens but now maybe see it differently. Is there a way to engage that without going sideways?
I'll respond to that. TIF is very complex. You can be on the board for a while and go through TIF stuff and really not understand it well. The more you do it, the more you understand, hopefully. But maybe the letter was somewhat confusing. I wouldn't feel that myself. I think what happened was that a developer purchased several homes, said they'd move them, and that spooked people. It sounded like a done deal, and because people didn't understand TIF, they felt their homes were purchased, they'd be moved out, and something was going to happen, and that wasn't good. And as been pointed out tonight, even if that were to happen, there are a lot of steps that have to go through before it could happen, and the board has no intent in doing that. And as Mr. Slavny explained, the planners feel they got a bit ahead of the neighbors in their interest in what might happen in downtown 20 or more years out from here as far as the life of the TID. So, but I think it was the fact that homes were purchased up by one developer who said they'd move them out and change the neighborhood. So I think that's one reason that we're here and have a room full of people, which is fine. We're happy to have people here. But I think that's what caused the problem, not a lack of understanding initially of the TIF process.
And so before we vote to shift the boundary back up to the former TID 3 boundary, if I were a homeowner, I'd like to know that this is a benefit maybe that I didn't consider, that I could get help fixing the outside of my home.
So that was, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
That was brought up by Scott Harrington at the Plan Commission meeting, and it didn't really generate any interest, Jeff.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I have to agree, exactly what Steve's saying is more of the concern.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Thanks.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Two things. I just meant there is an item on the agenda that would allow for the folks on the south side of Elm Street,
North side.
or the north side of Elm Street and 160 South Main Street to provide their thoughts to the board tonight. That's specifically provided for on the agenda. And then I wanted to just comment on this discussion of possible consensus on what should happen. And I'm not sure if you want that to happen before or after you hear from the
That's up to the
residents.
board.
But I think the way the agenda is structured, we kind of had to set it up so that there will be a vote on the comprehensive plan later on in the agenda before there's a vote on the TID boundary. And at the staff level, we thought it might be useful before we get to the public hearing, particularly on the comprehensive plan, if board members wanted to share their perspective on where they think the boundary ought to be with respect to TID 5 before we get to that point, not in taking a formal vote, but simply sharing your individual perspectives. That might give people who are here tonight a better sense of what direction the board is going, and that could have some impact on kind of what their comments will be at the public hearing.
So I want to see where you are on consensus. I'll ask Randy and Amanda first if you feel a need to talk first. I think we can show you where we are on consensus, and if that works out for you, then that changes the direction of what we're doing, I think. So you have to lobby less hard to convince us, right? So is there anyone who has objections to changing the TID 5 boundary as recommended by the Plan Commission?
So my only objection would be if after hearing what we said, the village residents would like to take advantage of facade improvement grants to fix up their homes, that the village could come and partner with them And the more residents that were outside of that TID 3 boundary into the new TID 5 boundary, the more it would encourage me to want the TID 5 boundary to stay put. I will say categorically, I am not in favor of redevelopment of that area at all.
You'll have to come to the microphone, please. And Jenna, go ahead while Randy comes
Oh,
up. Come on up, Randy.
I feel a little uncomfortable saying that we could include them in the TID because we potentially could have this redevelopment program when we haven't had any talk of it or any sort of plans to incorporate something like that into our policies. So I would like to, I guess I would like to see that discussion happen first before we encourage them to go with the old TID border, I guess would be the term.
So one question I have for Matt and maybe Mike, can we come back to redevelopment of residential and say they decided they wanted to, we could change the boundary back 5 years down the road?
You can amend the
Yeah,
TIF.
okay, so we're
You
covered.
can amend the TIF boundary up to 4 times
Four times.
over the
Okay.
life of the district.
Okay,
Could I ask a quick question?
yeah, go ahead.
How would that grant mechanism be funded?
Through, well, just like we're doing the downtown facade grant.
Okay,
In theory, by increment, but as we know, we're not generating enough increment. We had been in TIF 3 to do the downtown, so we're actually having to take some money out of the money we're going to close from TIF 2. So before you actually would establish a facade grant, I think we'd have to make sure we have some increment being generated in TIF 5 to do that, Jerry.
okay, so,
Otherwise, you're going to be taking money out of the general fund to do it.
so I understand, but to express that a little bit better, once we create this, the increment starts being generated, right?
Once you create the TID,
Yes.
Well, you get increment generated in a couple of different ways. One is just through the operation of inflation, but that tends to be a really relatively minor amount of increment. What really what really kind of drives things is if you see, so the TIF 5 boundary, it's a fairly large area. So you could see some significant activity happening somewhere in TIF 5 that would generate new value that would then create a source of revenue to do things in other places in the TID 5 area.
And that's the whole downtown area, basically.
Right, so one of the ideas and benefits to TIF is you can leverage development opportunities that occur somewhere in that TIF district and then use those dollars to make some other projects happen that, and it's kind of a question of waiting for those opportunities, making them happen, and then taking advantage of the resources to do some other things.
Okay, and so Jefferson Crossing would be in that district.
right, so one of the things one of the goals, or two of the goals for creating this TID, which was explained at the Plan Commission meeting, was to try to redevelop the north side of the village over the next 25, 27 years, but also as part of this to try to help pay off the TID 3 debt service. Because right now, as you know, that's hitting general borrowing or general fund.
Okay.
So I think one of the goals is when the new increments being generated in TID 5, Jerry, we're going to try to dedicate as much as we can towards debt service.
Great, great. So, again, if I understand it, including homes in this district would be a benefit to them because it would make them eligible for improvement grants.
It could.
It could.
It could, but first of all, we're told that the project plan itself specifically allows for that. So the two additional things you would need to make that happen, one would be you'd need some development activity generating revenue, and two, you'd need a policy decision by the village board to create a program similar to, say, the facade grant program, either to do it programmatically like that, or you could do it on a case-by-case basis. But what this project plan does is at least creates the legal foundation that would allow you to do that in the future if you wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think you're on.
All right, so,
You need to identify yourself.
Randy
and
Glish,
address, please.
316 South Main Street. I'm part of the Friends of Oregon neighborhoods and also part of the South Main Historic Neighborhood. It is true that when we saw the redevelopment in the Observer, that got our attention on South Main, and that obviously raised some red flags. But in terms of, we also have red flags on Elm Street, because we know the same developer is buying houses on Elm Street. So I think I can speak for Amanda and I can speak for the neighborhood. Our position has not changed. Even if there are grants available to homeowners, our position has not changed.
Okay. Amanda?
Yeah, thanks. So if I'm allowed to add to that, my name's Amanda Peterson. I live at 301 South Main Street. Yeah, I know that there are benefits to living in a TIF district in theory, but the problem is I've never seen them in practice. And I know a lot of you've been on the board for a long time, and, I'd like to know when the last time a TIF was granted to an owner-occupied residence.
I've been on the board a long time. 15 years, I've not seen that happen.
Yeah.
So that's our main concern. I mean, I understand that there's a potential for a benefit, and I have been telling people when I have talked to my neighbors, I've said, there is the potential. Like if you lived in a historic home, you might be able to request funds to update it enough to get it on the historic registry or something like that. Those things happen, but it's not real often, and I had people weigh that. So I just want you all to know that we've been aware, and we've been talking to people and giving them all of the facts. And, our neighbors, we've still come to the decision that, thanks but no thanks. A lot of people still want out.
Okay.
So Steve?
Yeah.
So in fairness, that was a great question. But in fairness, in the 3 years I've been here, we've never paid to help businesses with facade improvements either. But we've done that now. One of the biggest issues facing Oregon right now is displacement of senior citizens, senior residents that can no longer afford to live in their homes. And it's going to create a problem for the village that we're going to have to deal with one way or the other. Many of those seniors are living in these very homes. So if we displace them from their homes, they're going to have to leave their community, or we're going to have to find housing that they can afford within the community. And we're trying to work on that with the senior center and the proposed housing that could possibly go above the senior center if a lot of things happen. But besides that, we really don't have anything. If you go to the existing senior housing in town, it's booked up, it's full, you can't get a spot. So my concern as a board member, having had spent some time with Darlene and with the senior center, is where are our seniors going to go when they can't afford to fix their homes and they can't afford to stay in their homes? And I've been inside of some of these homes, and it's not good. It looks okay from the outside, but when you get past that front door, it is not good. It's, to me, not even livable, and I come from Milwaukee. So just because we haven't looked at things one way in the past, I don't think that necessarily dictates our future. And I'm a big fan of options. So as we start to restrict options, I just want to make sure we vet it thoroughly. And also, I get that this isn't a one and done. We can come back and revisit this in a year. We can revisit it in 2. But I would definitely encourage the association that's now been formed to consider how they would like the village to ensure that seniors can stay in their homes and what tools we can use to allow that to happen. And if tonight's not the night, but continue the conversation.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, we're creating that affordable housing fund with the extra increment from TIF 2 next year. So that could be one source possibly, Jeff, this year. Looking forward.
That's good. Yeah, that's just another option, right?
Yep.
And the future with the senior center too is a
Yes.
possibility. It's
Yep.
down the road, but
Yep.
not done
Yep.
by any means. But, so you had some prepared comments you wanted to give to us?
Should we
Or
do
have you
that
said
now?
them?
So Steve,
Do you want to talk to the Elm Street residents?
That's coming up in the next item,
So
item
Steve,
7.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're going to take comments under the comp plan public hearing.
Okay.
And at this point, we were just going to take comments from Elm Street and South Main residents. Sorry
Okay.
to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Just to,
Is that, I was going to have Randy and Amanda and then the 2 from South Elm, is that right?
well, but they both don't, they don't live on Elm Street, or they're not
Right.
from 160 or 170 South Main Street. We're just trying to keep that just to number 7, just those residents. But you're the chair, you can do what you want, but
No,
just,
I would like to do it the way you planned it, but I'm a little confused.
we're trying not to have another public hearing on the
Yeah.
TID. And so we were trying to just restrict it to you've got 2, actually here, we got these are the three people that, right now.
It's just the residents that would be affected
Yep.
on Elm Street.
South Main, so
Right,
you got right
right.
here. These are the three people that should be talking right now, Steve. Two,
Rather than these two?
Yep, this is for the comp plan.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
That's why.
So you'll be coming back up.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're ready to go to item 7?
Well, did you want to get some consensus from the board on the boundaries, or you want to wait? It's up to you.
So are we all okay with changing the boundary? I think I asked that once. Yeah.
So that's the first issue. Now, so you want to listen to the residents first before you start talking about Elm Street and
From
South
Elm
Main?
Street?
Yeah.
Is that the desire? Have them come in first? Sure.
Okay.
So,
So can I add one other thing? I'm sorry to. So before we vote on the TID, I want to ask the board to consider including, when you look at the, Dan, could you show the North Main Street area, please? So can you show the Dean Clinic up there? Well, it doesn't matter at this point. I've been talking to their facility manager, and right now, the clinic is not in the proposed TID. We have the vacant property in, but I think we should include the facility, so I'm gonna ask the board, when we eventually adopt the TID with the boundary, that we include the facility in TID 5, because they're gonna do some renovation to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just make sure we're all clear on where we are, because it's so confusing? So what I've heard from the board is consensus that that the board agrees, at least with the Plan Commission recommendation, to modify the TIF boundary to the TIF 3 line. And then, so I'm hearing there's consensus on that. It's not a formal vote. You're not actually voting on that yet. That will come later in the agenda. The second question then is how to deal with the properties on South Elm Street.
And they want to hear the residents first.
And they want, and the two on North Main, and you're gonna hear from
South
those,
Main.
you're gonna hear from those, South Main, you're gonna hear from those residents next.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll read item 7, and that'll bring Elm Street forward. So, item 7 is a review of comments regarding adjusting TID number 5 boundary to match the southern boundary of TID number 3, and allow residents from Elm Street and 160 South Main Street to speak if requested, and each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes for comments. So, what I have is Jackie Adams, 131 Elm Street. So we'll start there. Welcome, Jackie. So we'll try and do the 3 minutes, and Mr. Bollig will do some timing here, let you know when you have a minute.
My name is Jackie Adams, and I live at 151 Elm, which is on the north side of Elm Street. We have lived there for 31 years and raised our kids. We love it there. We don't want to have to move. And it's such a great location for us because we have grandkids in school here and in sports that we go to. It's all nearby for us where we can walk. And like I said, 31 years, and I just don't want to have to move from there. And even though we kind of like our side of Elm Street out of the TED 5 too, and that land use not be changed to multiple use because there's always the ability of the pressure of being forced out of your home, and I really don't want to because we like where we're at. And we would like to live there another 15, 20 years possibly, if I'm alive that long. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then we have Susan Mosel, did I say that right? Yep, you did. It's a good guess. Yeah, 131 Elm Street. Welcome.
You did good. Okay. My name is Susan Mosel, and I live at 131 Elm Street, the north side of Elm Street. And I've had that property for 30-plus years. And the reason I bought it is because it was in a nice, quiet neighborhood that I felt safe. And I do a lot of walking and biking and walk to the businesses downtown. And I am requesting that my property be taken out of the TID 5. And I also would like to request that the land use change not come around. I want it to stay residential, not option for business or residential. I'd like to keep it just residential. Because I'm not going to be moving anytime soon. I picked that house. I put a lot of renovation in, re-siding, redone the kitchen, redone a lot of things on the inside because I wanted to stay there. So I would appreciate it and strongly hope that you would vote for our side of the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
can't read the next, oh, here we are. Christopher Blue. 160 South Main Street.
True story. I believe you all are in receipt of a letter from me. Is there any reason to rehash that letter?
No, that's in our packet, so it's been read. Yeah, thank you.
I would repeat that I have not wavered from the position I've communicated in that letter, so item 1 and item 2 are still important to me, in that we don't want to be a part of the TID 5 boundary, and we don't want any comprehensive plans changed over what they have already been described as. The other things that I want to add to this is now that I'm sitting down in front of you all, I appreciate the kinds of things that you're trying to do and trying to go through in order to get to do those things. I appreciate the fact that we're trying to take a commons area of the downtown area and develop it. I appreciate the fact that you all are probably doing that as well as I could ever have done that. So your representation of me seems to be quite appropriate, and I thank you for that very much. The things that are going on in my mind right now, though, are that I don't know that we know everything that we need to know, and I don't know that we've really thrashed this out to the extent that everybody would feel comfortable with it, both from the standpoint of the board and the planning group and the community. The TID 3 that was presented in 2005, unfortunately, I was in another part of the country working with the Historical Society in the restoration of 2 buildings. And so I was fighting my own fight with regard to a TID 3 down there. We never got anything in the mail that talked about a TID 3. It just kind of rolled in and all of a sudden was there. And now that we have the opportunity to review what's going on with TID 5 and the people that seem to be associated with it, not from board, not from planning, but the private investment money that seems to be coming forward, I'm very concerned about that. And I think most of my concern is that the discussions don't look too unlike the discussion of the Newton House and trying to make a parking lot out of it. That's kind of scary stuff for us. That would surround us with, all sorts of commercial stuff. We don't particularly care that would take place. We don't want that. We would appreciate the fact that we can try to keep all of that together as the historical neighborhood that it is. I need to remind you that the wishes of the community were expressed for that particular property, which is the Newton House. It's the old Queen Anne that Sue Ames used to own. And it was a bunch of people who showed up from a historical perspective that said, no, is that 1 minute past or left? Thanks. I'd like an extension, not. I just want to remind everybody that group showed up and persuaded everybody not to, go with any kind of plan for either taking or buying that parcel or making a parking lot out of it. I attended a block party and I found out on Washington Street, and I found out how much the neighbors are invested in not doing something. They really would like to try to hold on to what they have as it is. And lastly, I'd like the village planners and trustees to consider the removal of the nicer homes, of which I consider ours to be one, and others, so that you can improve the percentage that you need to have of those areas that need improvement over the total area of parcels that exist in the neighborhood. A part of what you're going to do is you're going to justify or...
Finish your thought.
You can finish your thought.
You're going to justify the TIF and the money that's involved in it based upon a certain percentage of the area that needs to be improved versus a percentage of the area that doesn't. Taking some of the nicer places that have already had their improvements done out of that TIF will improve that formula. So I see every reason why you don't need to consider the homes on Elm or on most of Main Street.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. I'd also like to thank you for your positive comments about the Plan Commission and the Village Board.
Yeah, you guys are
Good
great.
people working hard for the
I know
village, and
you
we
are.
appreciate that, so, thank you. Okay. Any comments from planning staff, from what's been said here? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to be clear that the establishment of a TIF does not give the village any additional powers of condemnation or redevelopment power or design control beyond what the Plan Commission and the board already have. It's truly just a financing vehicle. After a TID is created, the day after, nothing happens. You know, this is really just a means of inducing the sort of positive change that we want to see. We see the project plan as a bit of an aspirational document. So to the extent that residential is put into that project plan and put within the boundaries, I just want to state it clearly that we aren't necessarily lumping in the projected redevelopment of other commercial and industrial properties with the potential for those residential properties to turn into something else. And as Mike alluded to, down the line, that is totally up to property owners themselves. That there is nothing that the village can do to compel those folks to move out of their homes.
Yeah, thanks. Those are good clarifying comments. It's not a hostile takeover by the village. And it's, as you said, it's an aspirational document and to help move us forward. So, and a financing
We're required
document.
to make certain projections about
Yeah.
what could occur here, but that does not necessarily imply that it will occur exactly
Yeah,
as
yeah.
we think it might.
Yeah, thank you.
I always use the line that Mike Slavny said when we created TIF 3, Mike. He said, if you look back, you go 25 years out and you look back, and if you've done 50% of the projects in the plan, you've been successful.
Yeah. Yeah. There are lots of projects in the plan. Okay. So that takes care of number 7, Matt?
Yeah, and I think that leads to the possibility of the board, again, sharing its perspective on what its thinking is about the boundary and how the properties on North Elm and
160 and 170 South Main Street.
yeah, whether those should be in or not from a binding standpoint, but simply to share your perspective with each other and with the folks who are here tonight. So as we move into the rest of the discussion and another public hearing, people will have that information and can take that into consideration when they're thinking about what they want to tell the board.
So you're saying we should see right now if we have a consensus, not a vote, but just a consensus on taking those homes out also.
If you want to, if you think that would be helpful to the process tonight.
Yeah, it seems to me like it would. I'm fine with what the residents have asked. Any objection to that? No. Okay.
If you do that, it does not affect the balance of the TIF.
Yeah. I'm going to repeat that. Mr. Grace just said if we take that out, it does not affect the balance of the TIF. The TIF still goes on like it always would, and it's just fine, and it's not going to topple because of that. It will not be harmed in any way, so that's a key point. Okay,
Thank you.
So the consensus was we're all okay with that, right? Yeah, okay, so we'll move on to item 8, Van de Wal's letter regarding the basis of the but-for finding and establishing TID number 5. And for those in the audience that haven't heard, that Van de Wal is our planning business that we work with, and that's where our 2 planners are from here. We always welcome them. They're very helpful.
Yeah, so I think the village attorney can speak a little bit more about the impetus for this, but just to kind of summarize, there's been a bit of case law recently about the additional support needed to support this but-for finding. That is a requirement that is in the ordinance that is in front of the board tonight. So we took the liberty of putting together another letter that would help kind of draw a little bit of a clearer line between that required finding and our professional experience and opinion that but for the use of TIF, redevelopment or just development in general within the TIF would not occur at the level, quality, magnitude that the village would desire. So just to kind of rehash a few of those things, we're still kind of seeing renewed development interest coming out of the Great Recession here, but newer projects such as Jefferson Crossing are still requiring some TIF assistance. Our finding was that the majority of the area of the district, 62% as of today, is in need of rehabilitation or conservation, and, without the ability to fund improvements there, those would not probably occur on their own. We drew the boundary with the understanding that there were a lot of what I'll call pipeline projects coming along, private development that are considering doing additions, doing new things, and the village would like to capture that new value in order to make public improvements, and also to make those kind of funds available both for commercial industrial properties and potentially for residential down the line, if that's something that the board would like to pursue. And again, it's a critical funding source, and perhaps the only real funding source available to municipalities in the state of Wisconsin to really fund these kinds of things. And from what we heard at the plan public hearing last month, is that in general there is support and anecdotal evidence that would suggest that this central commercial area could use this kind of an investment, the residential parcels on South Main notwithstanding. So we've just kind of lined all of these things out, and there's additional support to that effect that just support that required but-for finding.
Any questions from Plan Commission or trustees? Do you have something, Matt? Okay. Okay, thank you. So that takes us to the comprehensive plan amendment process, item 9. And item 9 is presentation of the proposed comprehensive plan amendments by the consultant and village staff. There's a note from the village administrator. Notice of public hearing on the comprehensive plan was published before the July 13th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting. Therefore, the future land map that was included with the notice does not reflect the changes to the South Main Street area that the Planning Commission has recommended in connection with TID number 5. The future land use map could be amended at tonight's meeting.
The proposed comprehensive plan changes are depicted on the map on the screen and here on the board. And there are two families of map changes that are being proposed. The first family, I refer to those as Category 1 changes, are updates to reflect current information. And those are the changes that have the black labels. So those kind of changes are where we had a vacant lot and now there's development on it. There are several areas where wetlands or floodplains grew. There are several areas where we've had redevelopment. And all of these changes, including a couple of corrections, are with the black labels. And I would say they're not debatable. They're reflecting the current facts and existing conditions. And my recommendation would be for you to approve all of those changes as a category. It's the consent agenda item here. The second category are where we're recommending substantive changes, including, at least for now, the discussion of the north side of Elm Street, the south side of Elm Street, the very north end of South Main Street that we were discussing a few minutes ago. The future land use map, again, is a map of what the village policy is about the future. And I think from that perspective represents more of a direct threat to neighborhood stability, say, than the TIF district does, because it's talking directly about land use. So let me take you through these. There are a good number of them. I'll try to be efficient. So the first of those changes is the north side of Elm Street. The draft future land use map recommends these parcels be redesignated from the two-family, it's a one and two-family land use category, and then at the end along Janesville Street, the planned mixed use category, to the central mixed use category, that's the downtown. And this change was meant to coordinate with TIF 5 as proposed. So hearing the consensus that we should take those areas out of proposed TIF 5, I think the logical recommendation would be to not make this change on the future land use map. Second, the south side of Elm Street. Here, the land use map recommends the redesignation from the two-family land use category and planned mixed-use category to the mixed residential land use category. That's our multifamily land use category. And again, that was included to coordinate with the boundary of TIF 5. And based on the consensus item, I would recommend that we not approve this change also. The third is the north end of South Main Street. There are 7 residential properties on the west side of South Main Street. And again, I was trying to coordinate with the proposed boundary of TID 5. Here I was recommending a change from the single-family category or the two-family category to the downtown category. And again, based on earlier discussion, I'm recommending that this not be changed on the future land use map. So I'm batting 0 for 3 so far.
Or 1 for 4.
1 for 4, that's right. That's right. South Main Street, so this is Jefferson Crossing, the UW Clinic, and Ziggy's. These areas have been designated in the planned mixed use category. That's a very flexible category, but they've all been redeveloped as downtown type properties. So we're recommending that that area be changed to the central mixed use, the downtown category, because we were able to get them to stay in downtown type land uses, working with, of course, the developers of those properties. The next category, Category F, is the northeast side of Janesville Street, just south of the downtown. So these are the...
Can I ask a quick question, Mike, about the last point you made?
Yes.
So I notice 1, 2, 3, is it 3 residential lots leading up to Ziggy's?
It's starting at Ziggy's and the health clinic driveway.
Included in that?
I believe there's a total of 7. The north end has historically, the two northern houses are designated for 2 flats.
Starting at the Sue Ames house and going south? Or?
On the west side of, on South Main, and then going down 7 houses.
So are you recommending that those 7 homes be changed to central mixed use on the future land use map?
Now I'm recommending that we just keep the designation as is on the future land use map based on not having those in the TID.
And that ends where?
That ends at the driveway of the health clinic.
Got it. And then north to Ziggy's?
Correct.
And beyond?
Yeah.
Got it.
On the northeast side of Janesville Street, I'll see if I can hit this. There are a couple of properties that are houses, and those are adjacent to the downtown area. Those were discussed at the Plan Commission as potentially transitioning into the downtown land use category, and our recommendation is to make that change. And again, until the property owners wish to do anything, they would stay as housing units. Those houses are in need of some reinvestment, and there's a potential for redevelopment. They back up to the apartment complexes that are located along their rear property line. The next area is the area owned by the village that contains the library, the post office, the senior center, and the parking area. Those are currently designated for institutional, but our downtown plan indicates that potentially we could get some mixed institutional and residential development in that area. Our potential for redevelopment goes up higher if we put them in the downtown land use category, where we can bring the buildings right up to the street. My recommendation there is to include those in the central mixed use, the downtown category. So moving out of the downtown area to the north, just south of the old Methodist Church property is a beautiful Victorian home. That area was shown in the planned neighborhood category, which would also allow two-family or multifamily, as was the entire old Methodist Church property. With the Methodist Church property being acquired by the village, I think the time is right to redesignate this home back into the single-family land use category. That's what it is now, and I think we should make that change on this map. Next, going up to Market Street, and Dan, if you could pan to the north. On the west side of Market Street, we have a really interesting mix of land uses, and those have been shown in the industrial category for a long time. General industrial and planned industrial or light industrial category. We've had a number of visits at the Plan Commission with potential redevelopment ideas where people are talking about retail or professional service, some personal service land uses, even some residential land uses. None of those things are allowed in those industrial categories. If we showed them in a broader land use category, such as our planned mixed use category, all of those uses potentially could be allowed, and we'd have control through the zoning process. That's our broadest group of options, and based on the range of actual redevelopment requests we've had, I think that redesignating those in the planned mixed use category would help stimulate the redevelopment of that west side of Market Street. Alrighty, I'm on to the next page, which is item K. In the North Business Park, we currently have a mix of our general industrial districts that allows outdoor storage in a very carefully controlled manner, and our planned industrial district, which requires everything to be indoors. All the recent development we've had has wanted the general industrial zoning district there, but we've got this kind of spotty designation on the future land use map. That outdoor storage and display is a conditional use. We have strong control over exactly how it happens, and based on the well-established trends up there, I'm recommending we get rid of this kind of spotty pattern and just show it all for general industrial. I think our zoning code has shown that it gives us the control to keep that area nice. And that would allow some of the existing businesses potentially to expand without going through the comp plan change amendment lot by lot, which is 3 months of waiting for an actual development project. And then finally, if we pan over a little bit to the west, Dan, we have some changes recommended in the Alpine Dairy area. So we have a pond on that property, and in the area to the southeast of that pond, I'm recommending that we show an area that's largely floodplain to park and open space. That's an area that generally can't be developed, except for the southern margin of that area is nice flat land and would be good for a couple soccer fields or ball fields in that area, or maybe it's ultimate frisbee. You know, we're short of play fields, and that would be an ideal place for a neighborhood park, and it's largely constrained anyway. That puts that park next to the pond and next to the woods and along an environmental corridor there where we can get a bike trail extension. If we show the area for a proposed park ahead of time, our chances of getting the park there go way up. I'm recommending we show that area for park and open space. Also in that area, we have a narrow area next to the woods. This is not an upland woods, it's a lowland woods. You might call it a swamp. And it's nicer than a lot of the swamps that I'm familiar with. And that's a great area to extend our bike trail and make this great connection from our big area of parkland south of Netherwood Road up towards the new rotary bike path. And again, I think this would be a logical extension. We need a little bit of land out of the floodplain to get that bike trail. Otherwise, we have to go with a boardwalk, which is a lot more expensive. And then finally, on the north side of the woods is a similar location where we can get that bike trail extension out of the wetland area and make that final connection up to the bike path. So those are the summary of the substantive changes on the plan that do not reflect current conditions, but a policy change. Those first several recommendations in Category 2, we've talked a little bit about the TIF district tonight, and based on what I'm hearing, I think the recommendation should be to not vote in favor of those changes. As a comp plan amendment, then this is something that's recommended by the Plan Commission to the village board, and we have to hold a public hearing based on state statutes, and that's the next item on the agenda. I'm wondering if you have any questions about these.
So just for clarification, you're recommending that we don't approve B, C, and D.
That's correct.
But then everything else we approve.
That would be my recommendation. Any other questions?
Plan Commission, any questions? Trustees? Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 10, which is to public hearing regarding proposed plan amendments. I will open that public hearing by the village board. And item B, I'd like to acknowledge the written comments that were submitted from village residents. Those are in a packet. They're online, so they're available for everyone to be able to see. So those are part of the record of the meeting. And item C, presentation by South Main Historic Neighborhood Group and statements and questions from the public. Each speaker is afforded 3 minutes for comments. As I understand it, Randy and Amanda will represent the South Main neighborhood, so I'll extend their time limit somewhat. So you can present what you need to, since you're going to summarize for everyone.
Hi, Amanda Peterson again, 301 South Main. Well, thank you. I need to say thanks, first of all, to the Planning Commission for sitting through hours and hours of historic testimony and agreeing to recommend what they did to the village board. They were very responsive, and it was a great meeting. And concerns, we appreciate that most of you seem to be in support of from TID 5 and the comprehensive land use too. We'd agree with Mr. Slavny. Use alone for the properties not included in TIF 5 or TID 5. A real quick clarification. The reason we think Commission first to try to get their recommendation to you guys now, and the combination of the changes in land use, they sort of go hand think the way the system is structured, developers and people who want to make the changes, because the legal notices are very short, 2 weeks for a legal notice and things, and having more hoops for them to jump through instead of more hoops for us to jump through for our side is a benefit to us. We need that extra time. So even though the land use change doesn't guarantee development because they still have more hoops to jump through, it's just, we want there to be more of them because it's usually the reverse. It's usually us jumping through hoops. And it's more difficult for us to navigate a system that we don't know much about. I had to do a ton of research to learn about TIFs and figure everything out because I had to turn around and explain it to my neighbors and talk to people, and that all takes time. If that letter in the mail had been our first notice of all this, we wouldn't even be here right now. And I found out about TID 5 was in the Observer on April 20th. And I say, hey, Randy, what's up, So that's kind of why the land use and TID 5, because places get developed. We're not oblivious to that, but it buys us time. So I'm glad to hear you say that, Jeff, that discussion of what are our plans. And then the other thing is shining a light on the process, making sure that I would hope that the village board forward in creating districts like this, community input earlier on. That would be really great. But thank you for listening.
Randy Clears, 316 South Main, and I'm going to give Greg a public shout out. I sent him a but thank you, Greg, for putting up with us at the Plant Commission. It got sometimes a little testy.
Everybody was very polite, I appreciate it.
But we appreciate that very much. I think why we're here is because we love this neighborhood and we wanted to preserve it. And we showed you the houses, we showed you the great architecture. In front of you, you have our new logo too, by the way, which we think is pretty fantastic. So I think you're gonna see a lot more things come out of this neighborhood. And it's not that we're not against redevelopment. It just, when we saw those Magnificent Seven up for redevelopment, people just went nuts, especially two homeowners who had no idea their house was going to be redeveloped or proposed to be redeveloped. So that just is not the way to do it. I mean, I was a neighborhood president in Madison. Developers always would come to us first, and that's the way you do it. You work with the neighborhood. That's why we're here. We love our neighborhood. You're going to see good things, I think, from our neighborhood. And thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Steve, I do have we gave a preliminary petition last time. I'm going to give you another one. Now we have 186 signatures.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we now have Planning Commission and Village Board questions. All right, Patrick.
I have two questions. First one is that in the past, when we've done TIF districts, it was always the taxing entities were here, the school district, the technical college district, and I don't see them. Is that no longer a requirement?
So we had the initial joint review board,
Okay.
actually before the planning commission meeting in July, and they're meeting next week, Thursday, the joint review board.
Okay, so they aren't part of the process?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They have to approve it.
The second question has to do with item F of Mr. Slavny's memo, the northeast side of Janesville Street, and recommending two residential properties be included. I don't object to that personally, but I'm curious, have we heard from the owners of those properties?
We haven't received any input from
Have we reached out to them? Okay.
Well, they received the letter, Dan.
Right, yeah, they received the same notice that everyone else did, but we had not directly reached out to them.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion, Plan Commission? Trustees? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing by the village board. And item 11, response to public hearing questions by consultant and village staff. Mike?
I don't think I owe you any more responses. I think I've already spoken about the south.
Yeah, good, thank you. That will take us to item 12, discussion of proposed comprehensive plan amendments by Planning Commission and Village Board. Those are the ones that Mr. Slavny presented.
Right, so we'd be looking for first a motion and vote by the Plan Commission on the proposed changes to the comprehensive plan. That's in the form of a recommendation to the board.
Is that not in the form of a resolution? Is that correct?
Yes. And the second step would be a vote by the board.
Okay, so I'll ask Chair Schnelly of the Plan Commission to read item 13, to bring that before the Plan Commission.
Yeah, Item 13 is a Plan Commission action whereby we have a motion recommend the village board approval of resolution number 17-29, recommending comprehensive plan amendments to the village board. And that will include what we've discussed tonight, and that'll also include the modified boundaries, is that correct?
Right, Matt, that should be part of the motion, right, Matt, coming from planning. Did they accept the village planner's recommendations?
Yes, I'm just reading the operative language here just to see. Yes, I think it would be, this is the plan, yeah.
Yep.
It would be, the motion would be to approve resolution 17-29 with the changes that have been recommended by Mr. Slavny.
And for the record, I think we should note, including recommending against changes B, C, and D in my memo, just to make that absolutely.
Which is what I would, but okay,
Yes.
you're reaffirming that, that's fine.
That would be the motion.
Yes. Does everybody understand that? So the Plan Commission, do we have a motion to that effect by someone?
I guess before I make a motion, when we do the comprehensive plan or the land use plan, personally, I look at it as trying to peer into the crystal ball. You know, what does the next 10, 15 years have to hold, and what are the best things for the village, sometimes at the pain of a small number of people sometimes. And there are steps in the process, obviously, to not only change the comprehensive plan or to do a redevelopment that you've talked and you've heard about already tonight. But we try to have a very good balance as a plan commission, in my opinion. Selfishly, I'm on the plan commission, about what is in the best interest and what is the best way to sort of expand and do a controlled growth for not only the downtown area, but the village as a whole. And as I take a look at the pieces of property on North Main Street and on the north side of Elm, and how we want our downtown to sort of expand and grow along corridors of transportation and enlightening parking and businesses in that area, I'm not sure that with the mechanisms that are in place for those changes to happen, that I would be in support of removing those pieces of property. I think that the boundaries that we had created for TIF and TID 3 and now TID 5 and within the comprehensive plan were reasonable for those very expansion reasons. I understand why they're being requested to be taken out of, but in my opinion, the arguments aren't strong enough to outweigh the reasonable growth expanse or reasonable growth patterns for the downtown area.
So we don't have a motion yet.
No,
And
we
of
don't.
course-
No, we
okay.
don't. We're just still talking.
You guys can make whatever motion you want, obviously.
I understand that, and I have to agree with what your comments are. However, it appears though that we have a village board that has and an audience, that's what they want in this area. Okay, so be it. And the future will show whether or not it was a wise decision.
Fair enough.
So do we have a motion to the, what we had discussed before, or do we have to restate it?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
You'll second by Eric. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig, Plan Commission. That then comes to item 14, Village Board, possible action, consideration of ordinance number 17-11, adopting comprehensive plan amendments.
Need a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt those amendments.
With all the changes outlined. Yep.
Yeah, just what the plan
Inclusive,
commission
yeah, just what their recommendation was.
I'll second that motion.
you.
You're basically approving the planning commission's recommendation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I want
What
to
they
thank,
just did.
I want to thank the planning board for their work in this area. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Any questions or discussion? So we have a motion second to adopt ordinance number 17-11, the comprehensive plan amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 15, possible village board action. Consideration of TID number 5 resolution number 17-28, approving TID number 5. So we need a motion, please?
Let me just
Yeah,
speak
go
to
ahead.
the form of the motion. So right now, the motion provides for approving the boundaries that were included in the public notice. Is that correct? That's the way it's drafted now. So if you want to change the boundaries, the motion should be to approve resolution 17-28, but to amend the boundaries of the district to exclude, help me out here, guys, to exclude the properties, I'm going to let you guys do it.
B,
'cause I'm
C, and D.
Well, I'm not
Or, yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
I think B, C, and D, if you go back into their comments, they
Yep.
describe the property very well.
Okay.
And then one additional thing, I'd ask the board to consider adding the Dean building, that lot, into the TIF.
That's right.
Okay.
On the north.
Good- Yeah, good reminder. So, anyone wish to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So that's resolution number 17-28, the changes on Elm Street, I believe it is, and then adding the Dean building in on the north end. So, any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So item 16, that ends the joint meeting for the comprehensive plan amendments, and Chair Schnelly, you can adjourn
We
the.
need a motion to adjourn the plan commission meeting.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was a complicated thing. I appreciate everyone's help on this. Thank you.
Thanks for the lesson, Greg.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Really learned a lot.
Thanks, Mike.
Faster than you did.
I had a weight on you.
I heard you're not retiring now. Is that true?
Wrong.
I talked to guy,
I'm fine.
they already had.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll hit Matt when you
Look forward to all that. John, Chris.
Being retired, and I'm gonna you.
Oh, no, you're not.
Proceed.
Really upset about
Moving on.
As soon as Dan tells me we are.
That's the-
Okay, okay. We are back in action here. Item 18, which is village attorney, village administrator report. And item A, discussion of possible action, recovering money owed, which is $597.03 by former police officer Lucas Shepbach. Recommend motion, authorized action to be taken to recover that amount owed by former police officer Lucas Shepbach. See the motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. He left and then he owes us money, right?
Plain and simple, yeah, he signed a contract to pay us back. He left, and we sent him several notices. He paid back some of the money, and he's failed to pay back the rest.
Okay, sounds like a very
I think it's like
appropriate action.
574, I think, I didn't bring that.
You've got it on here,
597.03.
Oh, is it?
597.03.
It's on the agenda.
And how will
Oh, it's under it.
how will we go about collecting that?
So I think, because start with the demand letter that I would send, we've already sent requests that have, yeah.
It's been
so-
receiving statements.
Right, so I'd send him a demand letter, letting him know that if he doesn't pay within a certain time period, that we'll commence appropriate legal action to recover. It would be a breach of contract claim. I believe that the agreement actually requires that if we have to pursue collection, he would have to also pay the village's attorney's fees.
What about interest?
Interest at the rate of 8%.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so we have the motion second to authorize action to be taken to recover the amount owed by former police officer Lucas Shepbach. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Ben.
Item 19 is public appearances. There are none. Item 20, approval of minutes. There are none. Item 21, approval of vouchers. I'm sure there are some of those. We have vouchers tonight in the general operating fund, the amount $430,405.49 for approval.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Jerry's screen is blank, so we'll hurry.
Oh,
No, I already told Lisa, she didn't need to bring those on my behalf tonight.
Any questions? Okay, there are none, so roll call, please.
Carpenter?
Yes.
Boudreaux?
Yes.
Lanier?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Staton?
Yes.
Pollock?
Yes.
Brethauer?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Item 22 is community input. Anyone who would like to address the board tonight? Okay. Thank you. Item 23, proclamation announcements, board comments. Quiet night over here.
The event last Tuesday night, the National Night Out, I thought that was a giant success. Chief?
It was excellent.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Since, well, this is my second time being part of this, and I was overwhelmed by the first year that I came down, and this year I think was even better, so we'll look to see if we can get some more demonstrations I think would be useful as well, so we'll see how that goes.
Hey, Chief, you got a little something right here.
Yeah, I forgot to wash that off.
Just look at.
That's what happens when you chop it
Yeah, National Night Out is always a great event, and I was actually out of the country and missed it, but I know I've always enjoyed it every year. So
Yeah, it's
I'm glad to hear it went well. Good
Yeah.
weather?
It was excellent.
Great weather, yeah.
Good. Item B, staff comments, 2018 budget meetings which start at 5 p.m. And we need to be sure all notice those on our calendars. And then upcoming meetings, any comments you need to make there, Mike? You had September 5th.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about August 21st. That was the night that Jim Mann was going to come to talk about the CIP. But with scheduling conflicts and vacations, that's not going to work out. I'm still going to bring forward a discussion about the CIP, but I won't have Jim's analysis done. And so I'm asking the board if we could move the September 5th board meeting, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day, to September 11th when Jim could come.
So then no meeting on the 5th?
Correct.
Okay.
That works for me.
That works for me.
I thought you'd have a longer weekend.
Yeah.
I didn't even know we had a meeting on the 5th, so
It's good for me.
Okay, good, good.
I didn't make it on my calendar.
So what about the 21st then?
So we're gonna have the meeting, but I just won't have Jim's man's analysis at the meeting. But I'm still gonna talk about borrowing, but I won't have his charts and everything until the 11th.
Okay, sounds
So-
like that works.
So we're going to change September the 5th to the 11th, right?
That's correct, yep,
Sounds good.
yep,
Yep.
Okay,
And we're gonna talk about the CIP on the 11th, and on the 21st.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
okay, good, sounds like that's all set.
Yep. Steve, are you going to, before you start 24, can I tell you something about 24A? And I verified this with Matt, even though it says FYI only, the board actually has to approve Jennifer's appointment. And Matt's comfortable with us voting on it tonight.
Okay.
Before you get into that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So item 24, which is communication miscellaneous business, and item A is not FYI. We will need a motion to vote. Village President, appointment of Jennifer Nelson to library, replacing Loretta Himmelsbach for a term expiring 2019, and Jenny's in the audience here, so.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
That's
We got a
exciting.
motion and second, and I can tell you we had 3 very strong candidates, and I'm sure Jenny will do a great job for us. I've seen her work in other groups and as well, so.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
So we need to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It was unanimous. Thanks. Enjoy. It's a good group. So lots of exciting things happening, as you know, Jenny. Thank you. Item B, review investments, connection fees, impact fees, and building permits.
So we're running a little, right, Lisa, running a little behind on building permits.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna actually have pretty good news on the net new construction for the 18 budget, but maybe the 19 budget may not be as good with our building permit.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, we have good years and not so good years sometimes.
It's early. Wasn't it in the paper just today that building permits are down in Dane County?
I believe so.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, there's this list. I don't think I imagined that. Yeah, so it's maybe another trend. And home sales are gone down some.
Yeah, I mean, we have some real potential to generate, and we're gonna talk about this when we talk about the CIP, about right when the library debt's gonna hit, hopefully we'll have some good net new construction happening at that point,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Okay.
possible.
Any questions on anything on item B? Item C, discussion and possible action regarding Rupert Milky Task Order Number 2. Recommend a motion approval of that task order by Rupert Milky in the amount of $4,410 for updating the village construction design standards and policies.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
This is just a cleanup item. We recently updated our stormwater ordinance, and kind of in that, we also added, and kind of added things that are details for our construction stormwater, things like pond details, safety shelves. We ran into a problem earlier on a project with that. And then, quite honestly, I think it's been since 2005, we haven't updated our construction standards. So there's a lot of material, equipment call-outs that aren't correct, and it's just good to freshen it up.
Okay. Questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item D, discussion and possible action regarding school resource officer agreement for 2017 through 18. And the recommended motion is to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
So the only thing that's changed on the agreement is we've extended the year, obviously, and then we extended the hours. The SRO will be in the school from the patrol hours of 37 and a half to 40 hours, so they won't leave at 1:30 on Friday afternoon. So, and that's compensated in the union contract by giving them what's called SRO days, which just means that the more hours he works to keep him at the 1950, correct, Lisa? We just give him extra days off during the school year.
Okay, thank you. Questions? So we have the motion second to approve the school resource officer agreement for 2017-18. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
So Steve, I'll go sit in the gallery for E.
Okay.
I'll be
thanks.
back for F.
Better be. Thanks, Jeff. Discussion possible action, banking request for proposals. Request by Union Bank and Trust Village Board to waive the RFP's requirement of an unqualified auditor's opinion and 2 years of financial statements. And the recommended motion is to, the village staff does not like disqualifying a local bank from submitting a proposal, but staff feels the board should not waive the requirement of having to provide an unqualified auditor's opinion and 2 years of financial statements. So that would be the motion.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And I certainly agree with staff.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
We need that stuff. It's
No.
level playing field, and that's what's going to happen, so. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll abstain.
Thanks, Jeff. And FYI, Police Chief Ewell has been monitoring village's police squads due to carbon monoxide issues.
Yep, just a little bit going on around the country with Ford Explorers having issues with carbon monoxide. Some officers have passed out behind the wheel, gotten in accidents. We had I think it was the Town of Oregon resident, Andy Feast, F-E-E-S-T. He donated 9 units to us, so we put them on all of our squads, whether they're Explorers or not, just so we can monitor carbon monoxide levels, and we've had no issues thus far.
Okay. Thank you. Item G, discussion possible action. Police Department disposal of old computers and other equipment. Recommended motion for Rudy Trace's August 2, 2017 memorandum. Authorize the Police Department to dispose of old computers and other equipment.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? It's a routine action that we take on this stuff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 25 is reported committees. We have done item A. And it's still Public Works, so item 2.
Item 2, discussion and possible action regarding payment of a claim in the amount of $400 to Howard and Wanda Ace for landscape repair from snowplow damage at 5624 Lincoln Road. And the motion, Public Works and Utility Committee motion. Bollig moves, seconded by Boudreau, to recommend to Village Board the approval of reimbursing Howard and Wanda Ace the amount of $400 for landscape repair from snowplow damage at 5624 Lincoln Road. And that motion carried 3-0 to bring it to the board.
I'll second your motion.
Thank you.
What, is that going to come out of the Public Works budget then, Jeff?
It does.
Okay.
That'll come out of our snow plowing and, snow plowing public works budget.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Further
Questions?
Discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Well, because I had attended the Public Works meeting where it was discussed, and I remember, I believe it was Jeff said that someone at Public Works had told them we would take care of it, the village would take care of it, but then that didn't happen.
Right.
Have
Twice.
we, yeah, twice. Have we looked at how to, or like where the communication breakdown happened or whatever to prevent a situation, a $400 situation like that from happening in the future?
We're working on that.
Okay.
I'm actually, one of the suggestions and one of the things we'll probably do is actually, I'm going to, in time, develop a list. We had to do the same for ourselves upstairs, where we just had kind of a write-on, wipe-off board list of items that they could then look at down there to see what's,
I have one in my kitchen. so-
exactly. I mean, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, there's no shame in having a list, and I think that's something we'll be implementing down there. Because there's other things too that we've had some stuff with.
Okay, just curious.
Thank you. It's a good idea.
Anything else?
No,
Doug?
go ahead.
Okay.
Hey, you're chairing this meeting, correct?
I thought you want to make some comments.
No,
about
I'm
this
no,
motion.
I'm
Okay.
fine with it.
Okay. So any other discussion? So we have the motion and second to approve reimbursing Howard and Wanda Ace the amount of $400 for landscaping repair from snowplow damage at 5264 Lincoln Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on item 3, presence of a coyote family living in the vicinity of the Rustic Vineyards Detention Pond area. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The motion is Boudreau moves, seconded by Bollig, to direct Public Works Director Jeff Rao not take any further action to remove the coyotes at this time, and reach out to other municipalities to see how they handle concerns about coyotes.
Yeah. There were two issues here with
We need a
this.
second.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
two issues with this. Number one, PD would not give me the gun to take care of the coyotes. And number two, the coyotes had
thankful
asked.
for
Yes, and the coyotes had asked to be within the TID district. And, no.
Pretty helpful.
Remember, this is on the record.
So, exactly.
That's true, Jerry.
It's been a long day. But no, actually, and I understand that the coyotes have kind of moved on, but, in the packet, and as I described, coyotes are very skittish animals. They rarely, they can approach small dogs, they can approach small animals, people, that type of thing, kids, but there's just not a lot of documented problems with that. And, for the most part, they're, the problems associated with usually when people put dog food and cat food on their back patios, and these animals naturally seek out food sources and shelter. So, the articles I came across really were not dealing with anything. If you do, you either relocate them, then you have to find a spot that's willing to take them, trapping and relocating, or what a lot of places do is basically trap and kill. And luckily, I think these animals have moved on. I don't think they really cause a nuisance. It was just brought to our attention.
Okay.
But if they start using Acme Dynamite or painting
Yes.
tunnels on the
Yes.
brick walls, then we'll revisit it.
I've used every bone of my self-restraint not to put yes. Didn't we talk about that one night? About putting yes, Wile E. Coyote out there, yeah.
I think it's time to vote on this.
Well, I think I was gonna say, yeah, is it the vote to?
Did you not hear what I said?
Yes. Are you voting not for me to take action? Is that what it is?
That's what the vote is.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I just have a comment. Do you have to have anything to do with turkeys? There's a turkey running around town she's got 6 small ones, and they're all over our neighborhood over there, and they go from house to house and eat raspberries and.
I will be, I'll be bringing that before the village board in November.
So I'll tell you where she is.
Yes,
And
yes.
where the small ones are too.
If you let me know
By
where-
that time, the small ones will be large.
Where I can set out corn now and then we'll bring it before you in November.
Okay.
Last time I saw him, Jeff, they're in High Meadow Park.
Now we're really,
Okay.
now
Item
we're
B.
mixing everything.
Personnel, Public Safety and Protection Committee meeting, June 26, 2017. Trustee Carpenter, please.
Second discussion of possible action regarding amending the village's nuisance regulations. So this is a note from our village administrator. Board members, please review and discuss Police Chief Yule's memorandum to the board before taking any action. The board could make a formal motion on developing a nuisance ordinance, or could choose not to take any action and allow the item to die. The motion from the committee, we had made a motion to direct the village attorney to amend the village's nuisance regulations for discussion, and that motion failed 0-2. So at this time, the committee is recommending that the village board not take any action on this item.
And Chief, I think it's easy enough. Could you just summarize your memo?
Yeah, I think that I put in the memo my feelings towards this. I wanted to be proactive in changing the nuisance ordinance or amending it. The Personnel Public Safety Committee was not in favor of that, so without their support, I don't think it's really necessary to bring it before action to be proactive. I think that I can be patient and wait for community problems to address it in the future.
I'll second the motion.
Well, actually,
There's no motion.
there's no motion.
There's no motion, so then if we don't do a motion,
Yep.
then it goes away for now, as
Right.
Chief Yule just said.
They allow us for it to die.
So how do you not take action?
There was no motion.
There's no motion.
So I talked to Matt about this. Matt said the board could take the motion from the committee and vote to say not to, proceed with it or pursue it, or just not take any action and the thing just dies by itself.
So it doesn't, if you're not going to take action, and just for clarification for me, if you're not going to take action, doesn't a motion have to come to the board? Because how can you not take action on something that isn't actionable? But, like, if I hadn't come tonight, would that have counted as me? That counts as me not taking action on anything that's on the agenda.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Just procedurally, I'm trying to understand how me not saying anything is the same thing as me saying something.
If you want to put a motion on the floor, and you want to accept the committee's recommendation is not to go ahead with it, that's fine, if you feel more comfortable. But I talked to Matt about this, and Matt said because it's a motion that failed at committee, that motion still has to get reported to the board.
Oh, I see.
Because it's a failed motion.
I see.
If you don't take any action, it just dies away. But if you feel more comfortable having a motion, that's your choice.
No, it's not about my comfort level.
Okay.
I just truly did not understand. So what you're saying is what you're saying, I'm not going to restate what you're saying. What you're saying is it dies because it never got passed at committee.
Correct.
And this is just information only.
Yep.
Now I understand.
So now, other communities, the motion would have came out of the committee, and the rest of the board said, well, we disagree. We think we should pursue it. So then you can disagree with the recommendation out of the committee and say, nope, we think we should pursue it. But if you don't move on anything that's a failed motion out of committee, Matt said it just dies. So.
I would say to that end, now I'm over that initial challenge that I had. I'm there. I think that a couple of things came out of that first meeting. The first thing was that more information was requested. And I think that would have been good for me to hear. But without reading the minutes, I won't ever hear it. And I think that Chief had a very well-informed and well-educated reason for bringing that to us in the first place. And I've said it before, we hire professionals to do these jobs because that's what they do, So Chief reads all the magazines and keeps up on all current law enforcement tactics and techniques, and he adds that to many, many, many years of experience, and then he says, this is what we ought to do. I have a hard time ignoring that. But again, I could have gone to Personnel Committee, and I didn't do that. I couldn't have participated, but I could have gotten informed. But I would encourage Chief and the Personnel Committee to continue to work on this.
We're not going to continue to work on it unless you make a motion that you want us to. You should have been at the meeting if you wanted to hear the discussion. It was a pretty strong discussion.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why it was brought up? Was there something that happened?
The chief brought it forward and asked the board to consider it.
Okay,
Yep.
I was just,
Yep.
That's what I had heard before, but I just wondered if
And
there
this
was
happens,
a
the
certain
staff brings
reason.
things forward, and the board doesn't want to do it,
Okay.
and it may at some point in the future, if it's needed, we'll bring it up. But at this point, the committee recommended not to pursue it, and I think Brian's memo stated it well. At this point, he's asking the board and the committee just to drop it.
So I'm not interested in bringing up a motion to rehash it here or to force personnel to do anything to rehash it. But I am encouraging Chief and the Personnel Committee to continue to talk about it. As I heard you say in your memo, you can be patient. I heard you say in your memo you can wait for a problem to react to.
Yep.
I heard you say in the memo you don't want to bring it up and divide the board. And I agree with all of that. You can be patient and you can wait, but ignoring something isn't the same thing as dealing with it. So I'm just saying as a board member, I'd like us to continue to work on it because I don't think it's going to go away.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I don't think it's going to go away either, but like I said, it's going to have to be a reactionary measure now.
We gave at the committee level meeting, if you would have been there, you would have heard the discussion, so
I get that. I wasn't there. I
Yeah.
didn't hear the discussion, so you can set that to the side and just get to your point. It's the second time you said I could have been there.
Jeff, you've been.
I think part of the point, though, is that if you would have been there, you'd know that we had discussions, and it wasn't just about ignoring the problem. It was the way we were going at the problem. We tried to go at it at different angles at the committee meeting, and it didn't work in a way that we could resolve at that time. And so the implication that we're just ignoring it and waiting to be reactionary, I think, is not the best implication to take.
Those are the chief's words.
I know.
Well, that's important.
We
right?
don't always have to agree with the chief.
We don't, but it's important that those words be present, right?
And
That
they are,
They're part
right
of the
here.
conversation.
Look, there they are.
And I'm just simply saying I agree with the chief's comments, that's all.
You agree with the chief's comments without knowing the other side of it, though.
I agree with the chief's comments with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and my full confidence that the chief is doing the job we paid him to do. Absolutely. His comments. That's it.
Okay, so it sounds like this will probably come back to some point in time, and ironically, as this all happened, there was a situation where this may have been a benefit. I think Chief met with, there were 12 neighbors in a neighborhood, and a significant issue, and so on, but we'll wait to see how it plays out and it comes back. And I was not at that meeting, I was out of town.
We
long ways away,
did
so.
encourage the chief to pursue other methods. This was his preferred method. We encouraged him to choose other methods. Yep.
Yeah. And Chief is on top of things, and he will
Yep.
stay on top of this and get back to us as.
And
as
he was very
needed.
professional about it, and I really respected his opinion, and he did the research that I asked him to, and it was, it came down to a difference of opinion, and he respected the committee's opinion that to try to use other avenues other than an ordinance that would have what we believe and what I presented information on, that would have undue hardship on certain members of our society.
Okay, so we'll see where this goes as time goes on.
Yep.
Okay, so that, there's no motion, so that is done. Item 26, minutes not requiring action, there is none. Unfinished business, 27, there is none. New business, item A, approval of pending new operator licenses approved by the police department. At headquarters, Catherine Hines, and at Quick Trip 302, Angelique Crook. So we need a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item B, renewal of operator licenses, there are none. 29 is future agenda items, which will be coming our way. And then item 30 is adjournment.
And real quick before we do that, I realize as I'm listening and thinking that I probably snapped on Jeannie. I did snap on Jeannie, and I apologize. That wasn't right of me. So I'll try to think before I speak in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.